Welcome to Chokeholds and Chill. I'm Jen, middle-aged grappler, coffee addict, and proud owner of the world's ugliest armbar.
And I'm Mallory, your training partner who's always laughing, even when being absolutely smashed, submission lover, and early bird fundamentals coach.
Here on Chokeholds and Chill, we dive into the lives of our favorite sparring partners, the highs and lows of training, and what it really means to chase big dreams on and off the mats.
But it's not just about jiu-jitsu. We're here for the laughs, the lessons, and the moments that remind us why we love this crazy sport and this crazy life.
We're here to talk about the good, the bad, and the hilarious, because let's face it, the mat teaches us more than just arm bars and mount escapes.
It teaches us about ourselves and how to navigate through life while being a part of an incredible community of people.
I mean, that's how we met.
Whether you're a seasoned competitor, a white belt finding your footing, or someone who just loves a good story, this podcast is for you.
It's about the roles we take, the people we meet, and the lessons that stick with us both on and off the mats.
So grab your gi, tie your belt tight, and get ready to roll with us.
This is Chokeholds and Chill. Let's get into it.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Chokeholds and Chill. Today we have an awesome guest with a story that's going to take us on a wild ride. She's currently a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a dancer, a model, a world traveler, and someone who's lived about 1 million lifetimes worth of experiences, Maddy Jones.
Maddy's journey isn't just about jiu-jitsu, it's about transformation, resilience, and finding her way through some insane chapters of life. We're talking about everything from her days as a newly training jiu-jitsu gal through the crazy COVID era and a promotion that happened inside of a house. And we're going to round out where she is today, so trust us, there's no holding back in this episode.
I really loved this conversation a lot. I feel like it made me think, and it definitely gave me some things that I think are going to kind of change up my game, honestly. So I hope everybody enjoys this conversation as much as I did.
I also feel like the people who knew Maddy in her younger years of jiu-jitsu should take a listen, because today's Maddy is not the same girl that you knew. And I was so impressed and inspired by her growth.
Mm-hmm. And if she writes a book, I'll be the first to buy it and read it.
I'll be second.
Enjoy. Welcome to Chokeholds and Chill. We are super excited to be here with Maddy Jones today.
Yay! Welcome, Maddy. Thank you so much for doing this. We're really excited to talk to you today.
Hi, Jen. Hi, Mallory. It's really great to be here, and thank you guys so much for having me.
Yay. So obviously, like we were saying, Jen has known you for a little bit now, but I've never met you. So let's start with an easy one. Tell us a little bit about you. What's life looking like? Where are you calling in from today?
So I'm calling right now from Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's where I live. And it's kind of a long story how I got here from Oregon. But right now my life is full of a lot of challenges in really the best way. I'm back in school finishing my degree, and I'm pushing myself in a lot of new ways. And I'm just enjoying the peace that life kind of gives me here. Right now, my life is full of early morning studying, taking ice baths, going on dog walks, weightlifting, and just a lot of other stuff. And I just really can't wait to sort of dive into everything with both of you.
Yeah, I love all of this. I'm already like, let's be best friends.
Yeah, so let's take it back just a little bit. Maddy, where did you grow up? Who were you as a child? And what was childhood like for you?
I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and I feel like I was really so fortunate to have just a really great childhood. I know that is such a privilege, and that's not something that everyone is given. I have always been told that I'm really stubborn, especially as a toddler. And my parents love to quote back to me this phrase that I had growing up, and it was, "I know everything." My mom and dad would correct me like, your shoes untied. I'd say, I know everything. Um, and so I just love looking back and thinking about like little Maddie and her, her drive and her stubbornness that has sort of, stayed with me in some ways. And, of course, like in every childhood, you have your ups and downs. I grew up in a pretty strict household in a Mormon family. And I think that was one of my bigger challenges in my teens was sort of facing my lack of belief in our church and leaving Mormonism. But it was sort of a natural growing pain of getting older. And I have a great relationship with my family now, but that was one of the harder things, kind of going into adulthood that I had to face.
That's so interesting. I have some friends who grew up in the Mormon church and have since left the church as well. So can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit? Just because I'm really interested. I know that, sometimes they go on like the missions after they, reach their adulthood and everything. So what was that journey like?
Yeah. In my experience, like church had so many amazing things and I would look forward to going to church often, like the singing and the community and just feeling accepted by a group of people is something that feels really good in religion. But early on, I just started to feel like something wasn't right. Like in my, you get that like the ick or, just like a not good feeling. You're like, something doesn't feel right here. And for me, it was just lots of little things like, women are only allowed to have one earlobe piercing in the Mormon church, like no other piercings. Men aren't allowed to have piercings. And it's sort of to me, I was like, did Jesus or God really say this? Like, like that seems oddly specific.
Right.
And so just things like that just kind of turned me off from really like fully being able to kind of believe that this God or Jesus or who whatever's out there is whispering these like very specific weird rules and only for men or only for women
Right.
And it felt very limiting. And, asking questions about it growing up, I was never, it was really discouraged. At church, your leaders are like, would kind of, just not answer questions fully or avoid them, or, there would be consequences for bringing up that kind of stuff, like you weren't giving the treat at the end of the lesson, or, your instructor wouldn't, be as kind to you, or, you know what I mean? Like that kindness and that your acceptance in this community would waver when you would go off course. And so I kind of saw like people being rewarded for just diving in and just believing and saying what they were supposed to or what they were expected to respond or say. And then anybody who would say anything else was, not as accepted. And I feel like was questioned, like their real faith was questioned. And so it was hard to like come to church and have, people say, "Oh, it's really good to see you this Sunday. We didn't see you last Sunday."
Oh, that's
feeling judged,
Yes.
Yeah. And it was I just couldn't see. I believed in so many things that the church taught, like, like love thy neighbor and be kind to people. And, the Mormon church also has some interesting rules that Christianity doesn't like have specifically, like, be careful about drinking caffeine or coffee or alcohol. And it was sort of to limit, the risk of addiction, And so I think there was some cool things about the religion. I just wasn't really sure about how it was being gone about, like judging other people and being so specific about these random rules that I really was like, I still believe. I'm like, did Jesus really say that? Like, no, I don't think so. I don't think he cares if my best friend in class, who's a guy, gets his ear pierced,
Right.
Yeah. That's so interesting. So, something that it makes me kind of think a little bit, because I will admit that I'm ignorant to some religions. I'm not a very religious person. I don't know a ton about different religions, but thinking about like Mormonism and how it seems to be more like conservative, right? Like women, your role is XYZ, you can't do this. So like the hobbies that you have, So dancing and jiu-jitsu, you think of those and they are, well, jiu-jitsu is certainly not a traditional sport for women, but dancing, different kind of dancing can also be like seen as provocative or maybe like not.
Well, it's the dance where.
Right, the dance where. Yeah, exactly. So like how is that? Like, did you get into those things while you were still a part of the church? And how did that, how was that experience? Did you feel like you were judged for that as well?
No, I don't really feel like I was ever judged for doing ballet. So my grandma was a ballerina, and she was also like a model and an actress and a writer, a public speaker. She was a really incredible person, and she encouraged my parents and me, to get into ballet and put me into it. So I started when I was like 4 or 5, and ballet also kind of has its own bit of conservativeness in it, like being proper and poised. And so I don't think I ever really felt judged with ballet specifically. But just, I do think that being in ballet, I was and just in dance in general, it was an outlet for creativity. And I do think you're right there that like sometimes certain kinds of creativity is not encouraged in church. Yeah.
How would you say that ballet movement compares to jiu-jitsu movement? Do you find that it crosses over or that it gives you any advantage on the mats?
Yeah, definitely. I want to get into a bit about like what I loved about ballet and what really it was for me. Like starting at such a young age, I just started it. I loved it and I could not stop doing it. Like any other time that like an opportunity to try something new came up, I would try it. I would do basketball, soccer, acting, singing, piano, but ballet like always won, like I would try that and then I'd be like, no, it's ballet. So it really was like my first and deepest love of just something, in life.
Yeah.
And I do think that it really does compare to jiu-jitsu. Like when in dance, you're translating and speaking a code or another language. And so that really does translate well to jiu-jitsu because, in ballet, I would watch a high level piece of choreography or have it explained to me and have to quickly memorize it and replicate it in front of my classmates and my instructor. And so just that pressure and honestly that challenge of like having to hear it, rise to it, connect it, make it happen was so rewarding. Like, I would finish a cool piece of choreography that I had to learn really fast. And I would just be so proud. Like I just translated this code, I put it together, I showed it off and, you
nailed it.
Yeah, exactly. And so with, coming into jiu-jitsu from dance, I felt like I could easily watch and listen to technique pretty quickly and then be able to execute them, because I had to memorize so much in dance. And I also think anyone who really kind of does, some kind of sport growing up, they have a bit of a brain for that too. If like you're used to watching a warm up and then having to make your body replicate that movement and do that warm up, you're going to have a bit of an easier time in jiu-jitsu just because you're already used to kind of telling your body what to do.
Yeah.
I totally get that. I think also the part of that sticks with me is that the satisfaction of learning the choreography quickly, pulling it off, performing it, hitting it. It's like when you hit the choreo and you hit it right, it's everything. And it's as satisfying as like a super tight choke. That's just like
oh my gosh,
and no defense. It's like the same of like, yes.
And I love the comparison of like saying it's like a code you have to crack because holy shit, like I've got a lot of codes to still crack in my game. Oh my goodness.
Definitely.
But
I think a part of dance that like really drew me in, I think was cracking that code and then kind of this outlet to like push myself hard, like in dance, you're never perfect. Like you could always do one more turn, or you could always get your leg that much higher in the air,
Yes.
or you could always, do it and perform it better. Look even less like, what you're doing isn't as hard as it is. That's a whole part of ballet.
Yes.
Is like pretending like it's easy. And so I would just throw myself into ballet class and I would forget everything else. Or I would come into class in a bad mood and be like, I do not want to be here. I hate this. Like I thought about not coming. And then by the end of the class, like after being completely immersed, coming out of it feeling completely different.
Yeah.
So I really think like people talk
relatable.
about the flow state. And I think ballet was like the first place that I really found like a flow.
Yeah.
That is
I love that.
so, Maddy, that's so profound because like I danced for like 25 years and I never connected those two things. Like, yes, that is exactly what it is. It's just the flow state. Like you just feel it and you're in it and you stay and like everything just goes and moves so easy.
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool.
It happens in sparring for me too,
Yes.
that flow state.
And so when did you start doing jiu-jitsu then?
So I feel like to get into where jiu-jitsu came into my life, I have to talk about how ballet left my life. So before I started jiu-jitsu in 2016, if we go back about 3 years before that, I was a junior in high school and I was like, dancing was my life. Like I'd have class every day after school. I would have rehearsals. I was on our kind of like, young professionals company. So I'd perform regularly and I really had dreams of being a professional dancer. But I started to get some ongoing pain. And I think something that sucks about sports and specifically about ballet is that, you're kind of told that pain is to be expected.
Yes.
Like, oh, you can push through, like, you're encouraged to try to continue and, just push through it. And after like 6 months of ongoing pain, I finally got an MRI. This is like halfway through my junior year. And I learned that I'd torn both my labrums and my hips.
Holy shit.
And that like I'd been dancing on them for months, just torn up.
Can we also mention that this is extremely common in dance for dancers?
Yeah.
Torn labrums and still performing and 8+ hours a day training. Like,
I mean, and you add the point shoes in there and like ballet is like torture, But I still remember like that moment when I learned that my labrums were torn. Like the doctor basically told me like, it's like with people with this injury, like sometimes experience ongoing pain for the rest of their life. It's possible that, you might not ever really get rid of it, especially doing a sport as intense as ballet. And I just felt like the air had been knocked out of me. Like he told me that. I felt like I just, I was 16, 17, and it was my whole life. I just felt like I couldn't breathe. I like got up and walked out of that doctor's office, like barely holding it together. I was supposed to like ride the bus home after that, but I just bawled and I walked around like a nearby neighborhood for hours, like just feeling like my heart was like breaking,
Oh, I can't.
My heart hurts for 16-year-old you right now.
I know, me too, honestly, like talking about it. It over the years has gotten easier in some ways, but a part of me still mourns for that girl that learned that in that moment, and also just mourns that dream that that is impossible to forget about because it was like just such a part of me for as long as I could remember. Like when you're young, your first 16 years of your life, it's all you know. You don't know the rest of what the rest of your life has in store. So after learning that, I had a really rough year. My senior year, I had to have 2 surgeries.
Wow.
I was on and off crutches like that entire year. And I really think it was like the first huge struggle that I went through in my life that changed me,
Well, your whole life path just changed.
Yeah, exactly. But there's also a part of me now, so many, it's been so many years. It's 10 years later. And small part of me is happy because like though like that dream was stolen and it was really tough. Being a professional dancer is also so grueling. I mean,
Yeah.
like the fact that I was encouraged to dance with these injuries is, like says something about the ballet world.
Right.
And a lot of dancers, they dance their hearts out. They're not paid enough.
Yeah.
Some of them don't make it to be a soloist, and they're always part of the main group, which,
Mhm.
when you love dance, you'll take it wherever you can. Getting
Right.
paid to dance is also a great dream as well. But, most dancers retire around 30 or 35.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, that life would have been painful and hard, and it wouldn't have lasted, long term.
Right.
That's one of the reasons that I love jiu-jitsu, and I'm happy that I found jiu-jitsu because I feel like in some ways, if you do it, you know, in a way that you could do jiu-jitsu forever, hypothetically.
Yeah, I totally agree with
Yeah.
that.
So that gives me like hope and happiness that I have a sport that like, I could do forever.
Yeah, something that's going to carry you through long term because you can modify jujitsu and you can train differently, whereas ballet doesn't offer that option.
Yeah. And also like I was at such a high level in dance that like doing anything less than I was capable of doing
Yeah.
just didn't feel right. Not being able to, like, if I couldn't push myself in it, I couldn't get to that flow state, and I couldn't
Right.
get that, like, like that release and that just,
Yes.
happiness that you get.
You have to
Um,
literally give every single thing you have in that moment. And if you can't, it doesn't translate.
yeah, definitely.
Oh, so let's forward a little bit. So you've lost, for a time your ability to dance, and then you healed up after your two surgeries. How long were you off? Did you go back into dance or to ballet, or did you start jujitsu, or were you on a break? What were you doing at that time?
I was too sad to do any kind of dance after I healed just because I couldn't get to that spot that I was in before. And it was just really
Yeah.
hard to even watch dance or talk about dance. Since I had planned to be a professional dancer, I really didn't have plans for after high school. And once that was taken away from me, I was kind of like, what do I do now? I knew that I wanted to travel at some point in my life. My parents speak Spanish, and we'd gone, to Mexico or different trips here and there. And I just thought, you know what, like this is a good time to do that and get away for a little while. And so I took a gap year in Nicaragua.
Cool.
That's great.
Yeah. So that was sort of a in-between chapter, and I'd love to get into that later. But before we go down that rabbit hole, I want to tell you kind of about how jiu-jitsu started for me. And when I got back from Nicaragua, I moved to Eugene to start school at U of O. I had a lot of friends that were at U of O, and like college just kind of seemed like a logical step in my life, though I still was, a little bit lost still after losing dance. It was kind of hard for me to see like a long-term future because I'd never imagined that it would look so different than it did then. But I started classes at U of O, and I was really liking it. And I got my first taste of jiu-jitsu in a women's self-defense class. It was just, a required athletic elective for my degree. So I was like, why not? There was this guy passing out flyers like in the gym. And I was like, well, hey, I'll take this, meets a requirement for my degree. And I can kind of, I don't think it's a bad thing to try to learn some self-defense.
Right. Especially in a new city.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, it probably would have been helpful to have learned some of this before I went to Nicaragua too. The younger, the better that you can learn some of these skills. But this self-defense class like really changed things for me. I'd taken other little self-defense seminars through church or just other things when I was younger. But this one was different. Like I felt like some of my other classes almost like underestimated women because they were only teaching like, a wrist release and scream, which I mean, it's good to know. It's good to know wrist release,
Yes,
but
it is.
like,
But you need more.
it made me feel like if I can't get a wrist release and I get dragged into the car, it made me feel like they were like, that's it, it's over. Can't help you there. Because they weren't teaching us like real physical skills with another person's body against yours, so just these standing up things of like, this and get away, and this class at U of O though, we started in mount and we learned the UPA escape. And I was like, whoa, like, wait a second. Like if someone's on top of me, I can get out from underneath of them. It just gave me the impression that like, if you have a body, you can defend yourself. And that was so much more empowering than the other classes I had taken.
That's so awesome. That's something that I always say. I wish that I learned self-defense and jiu-jitsu when I was much younger. So I think that's really great that it was introduced to you as like a required elective in college. Like that's awesome.
Yeah.
I wish that was like an option when I was in high school.
Go U of O.
Right?
Yeah. They actually have an amazing program. They're through like women and gender studies. They're studying the effect that this class is having on their campus. And it is really amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. When the class finished, I asked the instructor, I was like, how do I keep doing this? I love it. He was like, what's your favorite part? And I was like, all the stuff we do on the floor.
Yeah.
And he was like, you should take my jiu-jitsu class then. And then shortly after that, he actually invited me to work at his jiu-jitsu academy in town. I love jiu-jitsu so much. I was like, hell yeah. Like, great. Like now I have a job working at a jiu-jitsu academy and I can train for free, like, or include it as my benefits. Sure. I was like, this is fantastic. So that's really how I got started, that women's self-defense class, being offered that job. And then I was all in.
That's awesome. So I met you as a blue belt and I was like brand new training then. So gosh, yeah, that had to be 2018. You were a blue belt. Mm-hmm. So how long before you promoted? How long did you train before you promoted? Like, were you white belt still working there or?
Yeah. So as a white belt, I was like an office assistant there working. And then I would, like assist with kids classes.
Okay.
And it probably was about like a year and a half, maybe 2 years, I think, that I got my blue belt after my white belt.
Okay.
I was pretty passionate to like have to have a new sport, I really didn't work out or do much physically after dance. And so this was like, wow, there's other things out there. I was really excited and passionate about jiu-jitsu and competitive and driven. Mm-hmm. I even shaved my head one night after a really tough roll.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I was going to ask you about that.
I had a really tough roll. I was like really wanting to get good at jiu-jitsu and I like wanted to win, and I was stuck underneath somebody in mount and my ponytail was like stuck behind my back. And every time I'd shrimp, my ponytail would be pulled farther down my back and it would pull my neck up.
I hate that feeling.
It's the worst.
Yeah, it's impossible. And I think I remember like the person who was like mounted me was like kind of smug about it. Right. So I was like, I walked out of there and I walked straight to the barber shop and I shaved my head that night.
Oh my God.
That's hilarious.
This is great.
Yeah. I can't believe that I did it, but
that's amazing. Like I would like to see photos.
So
yes.
Well, I feel like
I was just so mad.
Yeah. That's the reason why undercuts are so prominent in this sport, because we just get our hair ripped out all the time. Like,
I just let my undercut grow out because I still got my hair ripped out. It was just higher up. I was like, fuck this. Oh my God.
I also kind of knew like at one point in my life, I wanted to experience what like having a shaved head was like. So it was just like also good timing,
That's a good spot.
So now you are a brown belt, correct?
Yeah, I am.
So if you could sit down with blue belt Maddy today, what's one thing that you would tell her?
I would tell her keep going, and that she's doing great.
Yeah.
Maybe I would also tell her like, please drink more water and go to bed earlier.
Yes.
Like they're not lying; these things actually work. And I was so passionate about jiu-jitsu, and so and I think a lot of jiu-jitsu you just have to go through. Like there's nothing I could tell her that would have helped her on her jiu-jitsu journey. She was showing up, she was training, so she was doing the right things, like when it comes to jiu-jitsu. But I do feel like I, as a blue belt, Maddy just wasn't taking as good of care of herself as me now,
Right.
And I couldn't have forced it on her back then either. Like if someone went up to blue belt Maddy and was like, "Excuse me, here's a message from your future self. She says to drink more water and go to bed early." I would like roll my eyes and be like, "She sounds like such a nerd."
Sounds so boring.
Yeah.
Oh my
So I
God.
kind of had to go through that on my own and learn those things on my own. And on my own time,
Yeah.
So
That's a huge point. So another big part of your life, you got to Eugene. You moved to Eugene specifically for college, or you may have addressed that and I missed it. And then why did you stay?
Yeah. It was for school. It was kind of just like, what am I going to do next? I don't really want to live in Portland. I just got back from this big adventure in Nicaragua. Let's do school. Let's see how that goes. I had some friends in Eugene. Then I got into jiu-jitsu, started my jiu-jitsu life at my jiu-jitsu gym, working there. And what kept me there was just my job and doing jiu-jitsu, and just my relationships in Eugene really were what had me stay.
Yeah.
And Eugene, I feel like it has a pretty strong martial arts scene, and it also has the party culture because college town. So how did you balance like being a college student and like that party life, and then being involved in martial arts scene?
Yeah, you're totally right that like with Eugene being a college town, there's this big like party culture and culture of drinking. I honestly now, like as an adult or just an older adult, I think that it's so weird that people normalize like drinking and partying in college and high school.
Yeah.
Like I think it's getting better, honestly. I think that like this generation now that's in school, I think I read somewhere that they're drinking less, and I'm like, that's really good.
I read that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people come to Eugene for college, and then sometimes they stay there, and some never leave that habit of drinking a lot.
Right.
The group of people that I hung out with, and even like my relationship at the time, it was really normal to get drunk on weeknights even, or go out every weekend, do shots, stay up till 4 a.m. There's a lot of bars, and like all the same people go to these bars. And so there's sort of this social network of bar people. And it was like actually really unhealthy. I feel like when you're in a social circle where where drinking is encouraged and normalized, it's really hard to like identify it as alcohol abuse or dangerous behavior. But like looking back at it, that's really what it was.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get out of because, like your friends, are judging people who aren't drinking, which is like so weird. Like, like, oh, you're going to bed early. You're like so lame. Like you're such a noob. Like, and so it was also like this judgment, that was just, it was really hard to escape. And it felt like what I was doing was regular, was normal, but it just absolutely wasn't.
Right.
But I'm so thankful that I had jiu-jitsu and my job, because I really feel like they kept me tethered.
Yeah.
Like showing up for training, even when I was hungover, like, encouraged me maybe not to drink that night.
Right.
And I feel like I would have lost myself like even more if I didn't have those things. So I'm really glad that that chapter of my life is over. And I think I'm so much more like healthier mentally and physically for it.
Right. Right. And then during the time we hit the COVID era and everybody's lives drastically changed during that. So obviously that had to impact you personally and in jiu-jitsu. So tell us a little bit about that impact that you felt.
Yeah. So when COVID hit, our home gym shut down and we couldn't train. I couldn't work. We were stuck at home. And I feel like I actually kind of sometimes thrive in an environment like that. I always tell people like I could do pretty well in prison. Like apart from like doing something bad to get into prison and maybe like prison gangs and stuff. I don't know about that. But like being stuck in a space and being told like, you know, you're being forced to decide, what am I going to do today? You know, what am I going to do to get the most out of my time? What am I going to enjoy today? COVID kind of gave me an opportunity to like create something out of nothing.
Yeah.
And I really learned how to do this actually in Nicaragua. So when I had to take my gap year, I feel like it really pushed me to sort of like create a life or learn how to, like create something out of nothing. My program there, so it was in between high school and college.
Okay.
And the program was very like hands off. You got a host family, an internship at a local nonprofit. And, you know, you had to work there like 20 something hours a week. And my supervisor would check in every 2 weeks. And apart from that, there's no, you know, structure. The closest person that spoke English and that was in the program with me was like 20 miles away.
Oh, wow.
And so I didn't speak the language. I was living in a house with, you know, people I didn't know. I was doing some hours in an internship and I really was just like, what am I doing here? And it kind of forced me to have to like find something to like make it worth it or like make it into something like, you know, all right, I'm not happy. I'm struggling. What steps can I take today to feel better? You know? And, you know, sometimes that was just like walking around my neighborhood and trying to find like something that I could do. I found yoga classes in Spanish, of course.
Of course.
I just had to, I would have free time and I was struggling, not knowing the language and not really having friends and being all on my own at 18 in a country that, you know, that was so different from mine. And so I just really had to like buckle in and find things to keep me going and make me happy, you know?
Yes. What part of Nicaragua were you in?
So I lived in a small town called Chinandega. It's about an hour drive from Leon, which is kind of more of a tourist city that people visit more. Like, you know, Chinandega was not really a tourist location. So we never really had English speakers in my town when I lived there. That experience going in, it really reminded me of, you know, COVID reminded me of that because all of a sudden, like, I just had free time on my hands. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And it just gave me opportunity to start to create like my days.
Yeah. And at one point you guys started to create training into your days. You brought mats into the house.
Yeah.
What did that look like? You guys were
we were going crazy being cooped up.
Yeah.
And so I was really lucky, honestly. COVID was a good time for me in some ways because I lived with a black belt.
Right.
And so my boyfriend and I at the time, we brought mats in and we would train whenever we got bored, you know, for an hour or two. Sometimes doing like 10-minute rounds. Then we'd watch them on video, talk about them, and then do more.
Wow. That's some intense learning right there.
Yeah, it was really transformative. And I'm so grateful for that time that I got to train.
Yes.
We even started like our home gym wasn't open. Oregon was shut down for almost 2 years, I think.
Yeah, it was a long time.
It was like combat sports or close contact sports were prohibited or something like that. I think some gyms opened up still, but our gym was like central downtown and we just did not feel comfortable opening officially. So we started having people over to train in our garage when things were getting a little better, right? Like at first we were really shut down, but as like, a year and a half went on, we were like, okay, we can do some jiu-jitsu with like a small group of people and not worry too much about spreading it because we're keeping our circle really small.
Right.
But I started to have a girl group over to train in my garage.
So cool.
Yeah, I think this was like a really cool time because it was the first time that like jiu-jitsu really became my own. Like I had to decide like to make training happen. And I had to, I had to be the one to invite the training partners and like say what time it was going to be at or what we were going to work on. After Katie left, I was one of like the main, like the only higher belt that was a female at my gym.
Oh wow.
There was a few more, but yeah, I was one of the only blue belts. Just the higher up you get in jiu-jitsu, the less ladies I feel like you see at that level, right?
Yeah.
So I was one of few blue belt ladies at the gym. And so, I was inviting a few of my white belt friends and I had a purple belt friend and they would come over and we'd train a bunch, but I was more like leading it. And so that was cool. I got to like really like start making jiu-jitsu my own.
That's amazing. And then you have, I think, in my opinion, it's like one of the most unconventional promotion stories. During all of this lockdown, during training in the garage, you get promoted to purple belt. So what was that like? Take us through that.
So it was one of the nights that we were just training with the gals. And like randomly, like my friends start showing up and sitting down in the garage, like watching us. Okay. And like, that was somewhat normal once in a while to like, if someone couldn't show up to training or they were late, just coming in and watching for a bit, just hanging out.
Yeah.
But like slowly more and more people start showing up and I'm like, this is kind of weird. Cause it's just like the 4 or 5 of us training. I'm like, what is going on?
Right.
And then we're finishing up training and my boyfriend at the time, who's been watching with the group, starts like making what I think is like an announcement, like about training together or like, wants to talk about COVID. But then as he's talking, I'm like, wait a second, he's talking about me. And, complimenting my jiu-jitsu and, making the announcement about me. And I'm like, what is happening? And out of nowhere, he like pulls a purple belt from behind his back and everyone starts clapping. And I'm just standing there like in complete shock. I just didn't even believe it was real.
Wow.
And I realized, wait a second, all my friends had been coming into the room because this was planned, and all my friends had come just for this one single belt promotion. So that was really cool. Yeah.
It just speaks to like the community that you build in jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
So did that promotion feel different or more special than other promotions because of how it happened and where it happened?
I feel like I had a little bit of imposter syndrome.
Oh, relatable.
I think that's like pretty common in jiu-jitsu. But it wasn't like any promotion I'd ever seen before, which like left me feeling like, or having a hard time even believing that it happened. But it also made it cool and special. Like I was secretly training and like advancing in jiu-jitsu while the world was like on lockdown.
That's so rad.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like super secret spy training.
Yes.
But I mean, looking back on it now, I feel like I definitely earned my purple belt at the right time. Like
Yeah.
I've been putting in a ton of work and improving quickly with all the one-on-one training I was getting with the black belt I lived with. But yeah, it made me see jiu-jitsu in a different way. It wasn't like jiu-jitsu became something that didn't just happen at a gym with a ton of people.
Uh-huh.
It also like became more personal. Like I just need me and one other person, or sometimes like just a dummy or just my body to practice, solo drills and stuff. Like I don't need like kind of brought jiu-jitsu down to its minimum. Like this is what I need to do it. And that's that.
So let's shift gears a little bit. We want to talk about, so you spent obviously a ton of time in your home gym, but you managed the gym and you were dating an instructor. So what was it like balancing the business, the coaching, and then your athletic development?
And your relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's a lot. But
It's a loaded question.
Let's just back, right?
Yeah.
Pull up a
Well,
chair.
I feel like with any job or with anything worth doing, there were ups and downs. There were days I was so exhausted from working, getting to the gym, cleaning up, opening up, teaching, helping members, and then trying to stay on the mat to train.
Yeah.
That's really hard. Sometimes you hop on the mat to train and then you get interrupted, from people needing your help.
Yes.
And I love to help, but sometimes this led me to like taking my training into my own hands and training outside of normal classes. So like grabbing a couple training partners and training when we were closed, just so that I didn't have those interruptions and distraction of like, you see somebody come into the gym and they're looking to learn about jiu-jitsu and everyone's busy and no one can help them. And so I want to hop up and go talk to them, because I really did love sharing what I was passionate about and I liked the work I was doing. So it was sometimes hard to prioritize my own training like when we were open. So I had a lot of like, especially after COVID, and I learned to kind of train on my own. After that, I really had a lot of training sessions that were kind of outside of normal jiu-jitsu class.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So that's interesting that you had to sort of like balance your own training time and, give more of yourself almost. Like you're giving yourself during your work hours, you're giving yourself during class hours, and then you also have to find more time for just you to train in.
Yeah, it was definitely a hard balance, but I enjoyed working at my home gym so much. I learned so much about small business and just business in general. When you work at a small business, like there's few employees, and so every employee wears many hats. I all of a sudden became like a manager and an event planner, and a coach and a janitor. And so it really like showed me how complex and dynamic a business can be.
Yeah.
And it kind of started my passion that I have now for learning about business. So yeah.
That's excellent. So you mentioned that you were living with a black belt during COVID. So you dated the head instructor while you were training. How was that dynamic?
So I met my now
also, yes?
I know, yeah, we did. So I met my like now ex-boyfriend through our gym community.
Okay.
And shortly after we started dating, he started working at my home gym again with me. And he was a brown belt when we met.
Okay.
And especially when I was like a white belt and, just starting out, belts back then kind of affected the way that I would see my training partners and people in the jiu-jitsu world. I think there's definitely something to be said about that position of power. Like it's easy as a lower belt to idolize higher belts.
Yeah.
They almost feel a little bit untouchable. They have that cool factor.
Yeah.
And I realized over the years, and back then too, that like the more I trained, the more I could see my upper belt training partners as just normal people. And my ex was a great person as well, but the brown belt definitely was something that initially drew me to get to know him.
He's pretty
really
charismatic too.
Yeah, definitely. Like he was a big part of our gym community.
Yeah.
And it was really a privilege to work so closely with him and learn so much from him. We taught classes together. We planned events and executed together, the events together. And so it was a really cool and like dynamic part of our relationship. I feel like jiu-jitsu is great. But like most things, it's even better when you're doing it with your close friends or family or romantic partners. Like it just becomes even cooler, to do something that you love and have like a shared passion. And that was really the foundation of our relationship and also a big motivation for training.
When you have a partner to hold you accountable and, keep you going, like that's huge. Like
super
Jen's my jiu-jitsu wife.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it doesn't even have to be like,
that's what we always tell people. Like if you want to stick with it long term, like find a friend and bring somebody with you that's going to love it too.
Yes, it doesn't even have to be like a romantic partner, just like a BFF that you're like in the trenches with.
Yes. So eventually you left that relationship and your home gym in Eugene. What led to that?
A lot led to it, but we talked earlier about the party scene in Eugene, and that was a big motivation for me to get out. Like when I first moved to Eugene, I was 20 and I drank a lot and I loved going out and partying. And that, that was when I met my ex. And as I got older, I just started to see how that habit was affecting me and the people around me. COVID also had a huge impact on me. When our home gym closed and I didn't have like work for months, we weren't sure what the future was going to look like. And it gave me time to reflect on what I might want to do if I couldn't work at my home gym or coach jiu-jitsu. And I feel like a little voice inside of me started to whisper, like, maybe I wanted to do something else, like go back to school or try another like field of work. I loved jiu-jitsu and my job at the time, but I'd really worked there for 5 years. Like most of my, full adult life had been at this gym with this person in this town. So I was, 25, 26, and I just felt like I was changing inside, but my life, my relationship, and my work just wasn't reflecting that yet.
Yes.
I wanted to start doing things differently. Like I saw a life for myself where alcohol was not the main source of fun and entertainment. And I was also considering like some bigger questions, like, do I want kids? Do I want to have, do I want to have marriage?
Yes.
Do I want to work in jiu-jitsu as my long-term life career? Asking myself those questions, I was kind of coming to the realization that I wasn't happy. And despite a lot of effort to get to a better place in Eugene and in my relationship, I just could not see a future there. And it was big and it was scary. And I made mistakes in the process, but I felt like the best thing to do was to really hit the reset button.
And so after that, you headed to California. So what was that like, and what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced down there trying to rebuild a life?
I had some friends in California, and it sounded like a great place to, be in the sunshine and kind of just start over. But at first I was really like in shock and disbelief at my own choices. It felt like future me had like pushed me off a cliff, and now I'm just free falling. I'm like, thanks a lot.
You're like, I don't know what to do.
But I had this confidence in myself because like the feeling of making that decision and leaving was kind of familiar. Like it reminded me of losing ballet and like crawling out of that hole.
Yeah.
Or getting to Nicaragua and not knowing what to do with my time and having to figure out like what's going to make me happy. And so from my past challenges, I had this, I was scared, didn't know like what I was going to do, where I was going, but I had this like self-confidence and trust in myself that like it would all work out. And it really has,
Definitely. So, it's always nice too when it's like you do the trust fall and then it does, and you're like, oh, okay, we're not so bad. This isn't as difficult as I thought. So you've always been really passionate about setting goals and personal growth. How do you approach setting and achieving goals now compared to when you were younger?
That's a really good question. I've spent a lot of time, like, I'm really interested in the human experience, right? And so improving my own experience or like understanding my emotions or, what I want to do kind of goes into that. And I have read a lot of books, especially when I went through that period where I left Eugene and ended up in California. I spent a lot of time reading. In this topic of self-improvement, and I learned some really cool things. Some of my like books I would absolutely recommend to anyone who's like going through something, or even if you're not, like it's just great learning. Like The Four Agreements by Miguel Ruiz, Unwinding Anxiety by Judson Brewer, Atomic Habits. I feel like a lot of people know that book. But I've just done a lot of reading and research about goal setting and about, like self-awareness. And I think how I approach things differently now is I think it's easy to kind of try to set a goal that's sort of outside of yourself. Like, I'm going to drink more water, or I'm going to work out 3 times this week. But what's really made a huge difference, like a life-changing difference in my life, was actually working more internally. And it has made doing everything externally so much easier. So one thing I did as sort of like an experiment was I set this one goal, and this is seriously like what changed everything for me. I learned about like how we have an inner voice. Yes. And some of our inner voices are like really pronounced. Like some of us feel like we're talking to ourselves in our head. Other people like feel more like they have like an emotion that it's more of like just a feeling, like they don't think in sentences and stuff, which is really interesting. But for the most part, like a lot of people's inner voices are their like inner judge.
Yes.
And I just feel like it's so common for us to like talk down on ourselves without even realizing it. Like, like you might think like, no, I don't really do that. But like, I took time to like really think about how I was seeing things that I was doing. And I was realizing like, I'm like not being nice to myself, like so often. And so this goal I did as an experiment that was really cool was, instead of setting a goal about like drinking water, my goal was to talk nice about myself and sort of celebrate any little thing that I did that was like good, right? So like I put the cup away instead of like leaving it out on the counter. Yes. Like I did it, like celebrating it, like physically being like, great job, girl. Or like, fist pumping, or like, even if it was weird, I like made myself celebrate it and like cross it off my to-do list. And as I was doing that, like I just was getting continuous feedback from myself that was positive, versus allowing my inner voice to naturally, talk badly and not recognize like all the little great things that I was doing. I also read something that was really cool that kind of connects to this. And it's that a lot of us have like this huge ongoing to-do list. And we never really get that satisfaction or release or celebration of getting that done because, we finished mowing the lawn, but like what's next? We have to clean our garage. We have to
Mhm.
email that person back. We have to set that doctor's appointment. We have to, the list is never ending and we never really get that release of I did it. I finished. I'm done.
Yeah.
And so taking the time to celebrate the individual wins gives you a chance to be like, I finished, I did that thing, I can
Mhm.
leave it behind, I can leave at least a little bit of that stress behind. And it's really made it so that all the rest of my goal setting is so much more positive. Like,
Mhm.
I get to celebrate every little part of my goal that I'm reaching. And my inner voice is so positive now that it just makes everything easier to do. When you have confidence in yourself that you can come through for yourself and get that thing done, you're that much more motivated to do it. Like it's hard to start something if you don't have that confidence that you
Mhm.
can do it, If
Yes.
you have a doubt in yourself that you won't be able to actually do it, it's just so hard to put in the effort to make it happen.
Mhm.
So changing my inner voice has like given me the self-confidence to really try and do anything. Like nothing's off the table.
Wow.
And now goal setting really feels like as smooth as butter. Like
Yeah.
I set a goal and, you want to start small. I learned that from Atomic Habits and it really does work. You can't set something huge and expect it to like just snap into place. You really
Mhm.
have to slowly, go about it. So that's another part is I set smaller goals that lead to these bigger goals. But with that positive inner voice, making your self-confidence stronger, it's
Mhm.
really easy to follow through for yourself and come through for yourself. And like that's what I think has really made such a difference in my life the last like 2 years or so.
Yeah. So this has been like such an
Wow.
awesome conversation because I mean, obviously, this is my first time talking to you, but just hearing about your growth
Mhm.
and all of the major changes and everything that you've gone through in your life is very inspiring, and
Yes.
I feel like you are like wise beyond your years and like very. I mean, just talking to you, I'm like, what, you're in your 20s, right?
I'm 29. I turned 30 this year.
Oh my
I'm
gosh,
stoked.
congratulations.
Woo!
Your
It only
30s,
gets
your
better.
30s are your best years.
It's so good.
But I just think
No,
that
for
it's just
real.
like just talking to you, you really do just seem so like self-aware and just like motivated to grow, and I think that that's so special because it's something that not everybody has that drive to keep growing and
It's
keep
so,
pushing.
yes.
And I do think that jujitsu helps people do that. So I have like one last question before we let you go. And we appreciate all the time you've given
Yeah.
us. But
I know.
what's the biggest difference between brown belt Maddie today and white belt Maddie back in 2016?
Oh, so much is different, but I definitely like in a jiu-jitsu perspective view my training differently. As a white belt, I was really passionate and it made me judge myself a lot for my failures. Like
Mhm.
I'd really take it personally, the wins and the losses. And I think that kind of goes back to, relates to the positive inner voice and self confidence. But now, as a brown belt, like it doesn't matter what's going to happen in my training tonight. Like I'm going to go, I'm going to show up. It's sort of just like putting yourself in a washing machine and then a dryer and then popping out. Like it's a non-negotiable. Like no matter what
Yes.
happens, I'm going to go, and no matter what happens, I'm going to go back tomorrow.
Hmm.
So I think that is like the biggest difference between white belt Maddie or, blue belt Maddie and brown belt Maddie.
Hmm. Wow.
That's so fantastic.
I love all of this for you so much.
Yes, Maddie, you sound like a different person. Like, I'm just so happy to hear, like, I can hear how much you've grown. And it's just been so nice to kind of follow you along with your social media and that you're sharing all the things that you're doing to improve your quality of life. So we just really appreciate you doing this for us. And I think that it's going to be really beneficial for a lot of other women. and men in the jiu-jitsu community and otherwise.
Definitely. I think that a lot of people will resonate and be inspired by what you shared with us today. So we really, really appreciate you taking the time and sharing everything with us.
Yes. Maddy, do you have any socials that you want people to keep up with you on, or are you not doing those these days?
I've taken a bit of a break from social media lately just because I've really been trying to prioritize things that are really beneficial to my life. But after this break, I am planning to come back and talk a lot more about all this stuff that I've been learning. I feel like I'm at a place where I want to share it again.
Yes.
And so my Instagram handle is Care of Maddy. It's everything I'm doing to take care of Maddy.
Yeah.
So that's where people can find me on.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Maddy.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been an awesome chance to reflect and just catch up.
Yeah, we've really, really enjoyed it. And hopefully we can do this again sometime soon.
There's lots of things we didn't even get to. You have such a broad story. So we'd like to catch up with you again in the future and cover some of the things we weren't able to today.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Check us out on Instagram at chokeholdsandchillpod or shoot us a message at chokeholdsandchillpod@gmail.com.